Good morning. This is Father Benedict again. It's time for me to talk about my first mission in the order. So, well, I'd like to begin first with a little story. And my friend Jean and I had purchased our new gray suits at the thrift shop, and we had gone on patrol in San Francisco. We were out and we were on our way back to the brother house at 20 Steiner Street. And we were probably, I don't know, a couple blocks maybe, 2 or 3 blocks away, coming up the street, coming up a hill. And near the crest, near Steiner Street, I think, it was about a half a block away, we saw one of our brothers. And I'm not going to name any names, but he was a young man. And there was somebody standing in front of him holding a gun, trying to hold him up. And I'm not sure what Tom was doing exactly. If he was, I think he was trying to talk the guy out of holding him up or something like that. Maybe he was trying to tell him he didn't have any money. I don't know. But it looked like a dire situation for him. We felt like, I felt like we arrived at just the right time. So we came walking up to this guy. And of course, he's feeling a little bit overwhelmed at this point. He's turning the gun on us, wants us to know who's in charge. Well, we've been out on patrol. I think we know who's in charge. So I looked over at Tom and he was pretty frightened. And I just told him to to leave, go to the brother house, and we'll take care of it. And now this is just a few weeks before it was time for me to leave, on mission. So, and Tom was on his way to brother house in Reno, Nevada, where Master Philip was in charge. So there's a lot of change going on, people getting ready. Well, anyway, this guy's holding his gun on us. And Gene's there, and he's like looking at me, and he doesn't know what exactly I'm doing. But I just said, I'm not sure exactly what I said. I just said, we're done. It's over. You can go home now. And we're leaving. And so Gene's kind of backing away toward the brother house with, while he's keeping his eye on this guy. He's got his hands up, like he's going to stop bullets or something, like Superman. And I just said, well, I don't know, see you later, or God bless you, or something, but just walked up the hill. And I hear this gun click. And then again, click. And I turn around and look at the guy, and he just is totally freaked out. He's shaking his head and takes off running. Okay. Um, so that's where we were coming from. Uh, that's what was happening. Now I'm going to bring up something. It's today's Course in Miracles lesson. I want to share that with you because it really pertains to uh, this event and to events that I will soon be talking about. So I'm going to share the screen now with today's lesson. And it's lesson 50. It's the 50th day of 2021, February 19th. I am sustained by the love of God. Here is the answer to every problem that will confront you today and tomorrow and throughout time. In this world, you believe you are sustained by everything but God. Your faith is placed in the most trivial and insane symbols: pills, money, protective clothing, influence, prestige, being liked, knowing the right people, and an endless list of forms of nothingness that you endow with magical powers. All these things are your replacements for the love of God. All these things are cherished to ensure a body identification. They are songs of praise to the ego. Do not put your faith in the worthless. It will not sustain you. Only the love of God will protect you in all circumstances. It will lift you out of every trial and raise you high above all the perceived dangers of this world into a climate of perfect peace and safety. It will transport you into a state of mind that nothing can threaten, nothing can disturb, and where nothing can intrude upon the eternal calm of the Son of God. Put not your faith in illusions, they will fail you. Put all your faith in the love of God within you, eternal, changeless, and forever unfailing. This is the answer to whatever confronts you today. Through the love of God within you, you can resolve all seeming difficulties without effort and ensure confidence. Tell yourself this often today. It is a declaration from the belief in idols. It is your acknowledgement of the truth about yourself. Well, and that's pretty much what was happening in that instance with the guy with the gun. In myself, I knew that it was none of this was real. And by real, I mean there was no life in it, there was no energy. It was just a weak, pathetic attempt to scare us. And the guy who was holding the gun was the one who was really scared. He thought that it was real. He thought that what he was doing was scary. And he was scared. But I was living in a different world, a different reality. And I could just see right through the whole thing. That's the only way I can explain it. It wasn't, it wasn't what you might call a rational experience in the sense of something I analyzed, figured out. I just knew it, you know? Well, whenever you come into a situation, if you if you're paying attention to your inner feelings, you know whether you know what's going on. You can just sense it. You know, well, I think I probably have said enough about that. Well, we got back to the house. It turned out that Tom had a couple $100 in his wallet. That was a lot of money back then. He had just got this money out of the bank, had a secret bank account, and his family was always worried about Tom, wanted to make sure he had whatever he needed. They were really relying, as that lesson says, upon the material world. These pieces of paper, and here he is going to Reno. Maybe they thought he'd like to have a little fun, do a little gambling. Who knows? So he was really scared. He had put his faith in the world. Still, yeah. So that's what had created the situation in the first place. It was really an unusual situation. I don't recall having ever seen that before or since. Something like that. That's not usually the way we were experienced in the world by other people. Well, it wasn't very long after that I shipped out. Now, last time I was talking about this, I let you know I was staying with Master Timothy in Chicago. Spent a couple of days there. Went out to the movies the first day. It was really a nice time, and I felt really loved and supported by Master Timothy there in Chicago. It was in a house that we called the Berteau House. At that time, it was the only house we had in Chicago. Anyway, it wasn't long before I had to get up on the train and go down to Louisville, Kentucky. Pretty much a straight shot down from Chicago. I had my suitcase and my, I don't know, probably ate all that chicken and all those chocolate chip cookies in the 2 days it took to get to Chicago. So I don't have any details like that. But Father had talked about, just a few things. He thought that it might be a good idea to stay at the Salvation Army, not Salvation Army, YMCA. And I think he must have been thinking about what it was like when he was a young man in maybe some Eastern city. I don't know. I just imagined him in New York staying at the YMCA. Well, I probably knew better, but where was I going to stay? So I got off, and of course, the YMCA was pretty close to the bus station. So I went there and spent the night. I don't know exactly how much it cost, but it was a lot. It took a lot of what I had. I had $25, and I think it must have been at least 10, which seemed like a lot at the time. And I knew I couldn't do that anymore. So I had to find an apartment right away with my $15. So put on my clerics and I went walking. Wanted to find something fairly close to downtown because I knew that would be where I'd be doing my patrol work. Went down a regular main street that the bus went on. And I was down close to the university and a great big, nice big park. And I saw an apartment. Don't know if it was right on that main street or just a little off that street, but it was a basement apartment uh, in an older building. And I went up to the um, landlady. I think she owned the place and lived there herself. And I introduced myself, told her I was there on mission, that I was going to be there for quite a while, and um, that I didn't have any money to give her, right, but I was going to be getting a job right away, and I'd have the money for her by the end of the month, and she did it. She went for that, and those were more trusting times, and um, it was $80 a month, and it was a nice, cozy place, plenty of room. So I got that right away, and went out and bought a few food items like canned beans and things. Must have spent $5 on that. So I'm not sure how much I had left. As far as I know, I'm like down to $5. And so then I was able to change my clothes and get into some work clothes and head on back uptown to find a job. And what we did back then and had been taught to do was just walk into businesses and introduce ourselves and say, um, I'm ready to go to work. And so that's what I did. Also following my own guidance, my internal guidance. So I would wait until I got a yes, and then I go into that place. Well, that job didn't materialize as quickly as I wanted it to. I didn't get a job the first day, and I'm not sure if I got a job the second day or not. Um, I'm actually not sure how long I was there before I called to back to San Francisco to talk to Reverend Jenny, who is now the treasurer, and tell her that I was down to my last $5 and I hadn't found a job yet. And could I have another five? And she said, sure, well, I'll send you the money right now. You can just go down to the Western Union office and pick it up. So, which I did. Turned out she sent another 25. But the next day, I got a job. Uh-huh. Now I had a little bit of art training, and so I parlayed that into a place that made forms, business forms, things like that. And in those days, there were no computers, and everything had to be lined out by hand. So I never used the pens that they were using there, and they were really fine instruments with two kind of blades kind of that came together, and there was a screw to tighten them, and you would put the ink, you would drop the ink with a dropper into that space, and you could adjust the opening um, to the thickness of the line you wanted. And I was lining forms, But before they gave me the job, they had me do a little drawing with a pen like that, and that was my test to see if I could do the work, and they hired me. Um, so I did that for a day or two, but it was just really hard. I was really disappointed in my efforts to get those lines perfect, and so I went out during my lunch hour and walked around the corner to the street behind us, and there was this warehouse with this paint company, Gray Seal Paint Company. It was a local paint manufacturing company. Well, I went in there and told them I was looking for a job, and they hired me on the spot. It was just perfect. And so I was going to start on Monday. And I expect it was probably a Friday or something like that. Anyway, um, I went back to the other place. I don't even remember the name, and resigned and got my pay. So now I'm doing all right. I got some money in my pocket. Probably went and bought some more food, but I was going to start on Monday. and my job was warehouseman. And so I was going to be stocking paint, because the paint manufacturing company place was somewhere else that got shipped in cans that we would sell. And so we'd have paint to stock, and we'd also have paint orders to fill and ship out. Well, I was feeling really great. Now, when I was on mission, I was very faithful to the order pattern. And I didn't really have anything else to do. Um, so I was on patrol a lot. And because I was there to start a center and I needed to contact people and I needed to let them know who I was. So I was out on the street being seen. Well, of course, I got there in winter, and winter there was a little more severe than the West Coast that I was, from San Francisco on down, that I was used to. And I had a nice thick coat, and that I could, button up all the way, and some kind of a warm thing on my head, and I would gloves and everything. I could be out there walking on the main street of town, Fourth, I believe it was, all the way up to quite a distance from Broadway with the main cross street. And the bus that I took went down Fourth. Anyway, so I go downtown in my clerics, and I'd walk most every night. And on the weekends, I might be up there in the afternoon and in the evening too. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I would teach a public class. I'd have a Bible class and a philosophy class, just like back home. And for a long time, there wasn't anybody there. But it was great practice. And I would imagine that I was teaching the whole city. I would imagine that everyone was listening, and that the word was getting out there. It was entering into people's subconscious minds, even though they weren't present physically. And it was being taught. Um, and of course, I had communion every morning. When I first got out there, well, I had my little brass chalice and my little brass plate, and it didn't have any. Uh, I had to make make an altar and things. And I called up a Catholic priest, um, and told him I was a brother here and on mission, and I didn't have. I needed some candlesticks if he had any that he wasn't using, and I knew that at that time the Catholic Church was changing things out a lot. So all that old metal stuff was down and going down to the basement, and they were using pottery and trying to look, like they were singing folk songs and that sort of thing, and trying to look more international, more of the people, you might say, trying to be more welcoming. And so there was all this really great um, stuff available, and I was hoping that I could that they'd let me have some of it, and they did. Just on the phone, say, "Come on over. I've got some candlesticks," and they turned out to be beautiful law candlesticks um, with made of brass, um, ornate with eagle claw uh, footings. And I got three of those, and I got, I think I had already brought some kind of candelabra. I had them. I had everything I needed for a really nice altar. And there, at the time that I went on mission, there wasn't a missionary communion service. That came after I'd been out in the field for a few months. And so I was using the regular communion service, even though I wasn't ordained. I didn't really know, I didn't have any other service to use. Well, nobody was coming, so I guess I didn't, I didn't, it wasn't too serious an infraction. And I found from the very beginning that the communion service worked quite well for me. And so I knew it was working. Um, and I had prayers every night. I mean, it was just like being in an order center. I didn't do anything differently except that I was out even more, which I loved. And it was a great way to study the lessons because I was teaching them. So when you're teaching, of course, you really have to own it. So Monday came along, and I went up to the Gray Seal Paint Company to start my first day. And I come walking in, and everybody's there a little early, and I'm probably right on time. And I come walking through the door, and there's well, I think I might have already met Billy. I did when they hired me, Billy Farmer. And when I met Billy, here's how it went. Uh, I guess, well, he said, "Hi, Mac. I'm Billy Farmer from down in Somerset." um, and that's how I met Billy. So he was my trainer, and he was a warehouseman there. So Monday I come in, and the vice president is there of the company. He's dressed nice in a suit, and he's part of the family that owns this company. And they're all talking. They know there's a new guy. So the people that work there, they have uniforms and everything. People that work there have been there for some time. And it is like family. So I come walking through the door, and Billy's waiting for me. and so is the vice president. Don't remember his name, but uh, they introduced. I guess he might have just introduced himself and asked how I was, and I said fine. And he turns around to everybody and says, "Yep, he's a northerner." And Billy says to me, "Well, Mike, we're going to have to teach you how to talk right." I really enjoyed working for that, for with Billy and working at that company, and I did for quite a while until I got another crazy idea, and I decided that I needed to take a more humble job, and I thought dishwashing would be perfect. Well, I went into all the restaurants and asked if they had a dishwashing job, and they all nobody had any work for me, which kind of surprised me. Um, but I persisted, and I finally went down to the. Well, what I realized was that all the dishwashers were black. This was Louisville, Kentucky, after all, and it was a very segregated city. And there were just certain jobs that only black people did, like dishwashing. So I could see that this was it was even more important. I thought that I get this job. So I finally thought of going over to the university, and they hired me. Now I was the only white person in the kitchen. Everybody else was black, um, and they probably thought I was crazy too. But anyway, I liked the job, and that's what I did. And I think I must have done that till the end of my mission there. After, so I probably was there for about 6 months, and I was probably at the Gray Seal Paint Company for 8 months, something like that. Um, okay, so I got to I met some people, and when I was out on patrol, it took a while. It took quite a while for people to start coming to classes, but this one young man was really interested in me, and it turned out that he had a radio station, and well, he didn't have a radio station, but he worked in a Christian radio station, and it was a block off of Fourth on the main street, and it was down in the basement, and there was a window at street level, and you would be sitting in there, um, controlling everything. Like, I don't know if he must have talked on the radio. I never listened to that. He must have talked on the radio, and he played Christian music. And I think he was probably a part-time job, and I think he was like still in high school, something like that. He was pretty young. Um, anyway, uh, I just noticed that he was paying attention to me, and I would see these people out on Saturdays and Sundays if I was on street patrol downtown. All these young people, of course, they would hang around downtown, and there was some kind of little mall, not very long, not very big, but outdoors. So I'd run into them there, and then they'd also see me when I go down to the Skid Row area where the bars were. So I was gradually, uh, well, I was certainly being noticed, but a few people tried to talk to me. And, we weren't out there proselytizing and all that. I was friendly and everything, but I had a mission. I was out carrying the light in town. I was really there blessing the place. Um, not long after I had arrived, this guy down on Broadway, near the bus station, probably a block away or something. It was a place where well, guys would hang out there. These are guys that drank and smoked and um, I guess they, you call them homeless, but they weren't. Back in those days, people didn't set up tents on the sidewalk. So um, this guy came up to me, and I think, I hadn't been there but a few days, and came up and introduced himself and told me his hard luck story. And he'd been jumped by some guys. He didn't look very good. Obviously, he was drinking, and so he had a lot of redness in the face, but he'd also look kind of beat up. Probably from fighting, or at least defending himself. Yeah. And he told me he'd been jumped and all of his money had been taken. And he was new in town. And could I help him out? And I I asked the self, or the Holy Spirit. We thought of it as the self. I asked for guidance, and the guidance I got was no. So I told him no. But this is one where I really, I really felt for the guy, and I wasn't sure of my guidance. I had to trust it. If I didn't do that, I was lost. I would be a goner. Once I started doubting that and second guessing it, I'd be in trouble. I would have nowhere to go. Um, and so I had to go with my guidance. But I worried about that for quite some time. And finally, I was probably 4 months later, after I had forgotten all about it, almost forgotten about it. I walked by the same corner, probably going the same direction, and the same guy came up to me and he told me the same story. And I was so happy um, to get that confirmation. Then I took him down. I said, well, I can't give you any money, but I can take you out to lunch or to dinner. I can buy you dinner. And he went for that. So we went down to the cafe. It was just on the corner, um, and we had dinner. I think I had dinner with him. I'm not sure, but anyway, I bought him dinner, and so that was a real good confirmation. Um, now I also had not been there. Oh, when I got there, I had to, because I was on probation from the FBI. I had to report to the FBI office, I think. Uh, I'm pretty sure, because it was federal. Um, I had a probation officer there assigned to me, and I made sure to go in there in clerics the first time I went to let them know who I was. That meant that I had to race home from work and put on my clerics and race back downtown um, to get there before they closed that day. So I went in and reported. I let them know I was there. Um, and I was used to sending, just a handwritten note every month to my probation officer in San Francisco. But now I had to report locally in Louisville. So they told me, first of all, that I'd have to report every month into the office. And then, and he told me that in the whole history of the state of Kentucky, they'd never had somebody there on probation for refusing a draft or failure to report for induction. Never. And so it wasn't a bit like San Francisco. But I had my values and my beliefs. So every month when I was due to report, I did the same thing. I'd race home from work, change, and get there in clerics. I always went in clerics. I just wanted to let them know, you know, who they were dealing with. So after I'd been in town maybe a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and doing this regular routine, um, I was on my way home from work and I was on the bus. I just took the bus. And crossing Broadway, I saw that there was some kind of parade, big public event happening, and people were lined up on both sides of the street. So raced home, cleaned up and put on my clerics and raced downtown again. So I was going to be there for this public event. Lots of people to meet and lots of things to learn. Got off the bus um, and walked up to the kind of like where the crowd ended and across the street and came back down on the other side. Is a big boulevard, probably at least 4 lanes, maybe plus parking, and civic buildings there. So within a block or two of where I'd crossed the street, I was walking down, and there was the main post office. It was a great big building, big steps. The old time post office. It had a lot of dignity. And in front of the post office, there were two black men in a kind of they were wearing berets, and they were sort of in semi-military kind of outfits. And they had these two big Doberman pinschers, or some kind of a large dog like that. And the dogs were like, they were opposing each other, and they were on leashes. And these two guys in that kind of military outfit were holding those dogs, and the dogs were like at each other, It's like and so the leashes were taut, and the dogs were on their hind legs and trying to get at each other. Well, it was a pretty scary situation. It looked like it was. And my whole thing when I'm out there is like Master Philip told me when I was a student, that street belongs to you. That's your street. You're in charge, and you're responsible for whatever happens on that street. Okay. And Master Timothy had described going on patrol as kind of like, being a steamroller of light, walking down the street. You imagine this this light, this steamroller rolling down along with him, on both sides of the street and through the buildings that were on each side of the street, rolling the light through that area, cleansing it of all um, dark thoughts, psychic energy. So that's what I that's what I did, and I could see there was stuff going down. People had things planned for whatever this event was. Turned out it was some kind of parade, and I really didn't pay much attention to the parade. My parade was on the sidewalk with the people there. So I walked straight up to these guys and I walked right between them. And the dogs just immediately dropped down on all fours and got quiet and just acted like nothing was happening. They were just kind of looking around, like nothing happened. It was almost as if they didn't know where they were, you know. The spell was broken. And I looked over at one of the guys that was holding dogs, and he was just glaring at me. He was so angry that, I ruined their little show. So I just kept going. And by the time I got down to the end of the street, where the crowd was lined up, the parade was over. The parade ended. And all the black people poured into the street. And they started walking down the street. And they were heading, I guess it must have been west. And I had never been over there where they lived. That was the black side of town. I had never been in there. So I just got into the middle of the street with them and started walking along with them to go see where they were headed and see what their town was like. Well, after we'd walked for some ways, not too long, but we were clearly starting to get into. It was clear we were getting in close to their town, part of town where they lived. There was right in the middle of the street, there was this big pickup truck with the back of it facing the crowd coming from downtown. And they had a television camera, a movie camera, set up in the back of the pickup truck, and they were filming the whole thing, the crowd coming toward their end of town. And so it didn't look good. I walked right into the camera so to make sure they got a really good view of me, and continued walking. And a little ways farther, maybe a block or two, the crowd was starting to slow down. And I saw that the police had shot tear gas into the street. So they were, so people were reluctant to continue into that tear gas. And it looked like the police had some plan, to round people up, maybe rough people up. I didn't know, but that's what I suspected. And in my short life, I'd already encountered some very serious violence from police. So uh, I was determined to find a way to dispel this. Well, there was some tear gas around already, and I saw a woman lying down on the grass, and um, she was complaining that she couldn't breathe, uh, and that the tear gas was hurting her. Well, it wasn't hurting anybody else, and it wasn't hurting me. So I wondered about that, but I knelt down to heal her, and I got the to help her, and I got the distinct guidance that she was faking it, that she was fine. And I said, "There's nothing wrong with this woman. She's all right." To the people that were standing around her, and she gave me a dirty look and got up. And so we continued on, but the further we went, the greater the tear gas was. So I knew that something had to be done, or people might get hurt. People were going to get, you know, can become a big crowd standing there, uh, surrounded by police. So I held up my hand and pointed it at the tear gas cloud, and I was just internally calling for help. And a wind came up and blew it away. So I know that I knew that I was being helped by the host, that I was asking for their help. And it came. That's another one of those miracles. I was so relieved and so grateful. And the crowd was able to continue on its way home after that without any uh, interference. And it turned out, and I went further into the community until I was satisfied that everything was okay. And then I finally went home, and I had quite a walk that day. But what I learned later was that it was reported to have been the quietest day in Louisville in quite some time. Yeah, it was a weekend, like maybe that had been on a Friday afternoon, but there was no violence, nobody hurt anywhere in the city. I felt like that was a tremendous victory. And as far as I know, it was pretty peaceful the whole time I was there. There were no major events, violent events. So after I've been there for, I don't know, maybe 4 months or so, somebody came through, a brother came through. And now, how did this work? Hold on. Yeah, I've probably been there about 4 months or so. And, the word came out that they were going to be sending missionaries out more and more, and that they would go from one center, like where there was a brother already. They would go and there, and they would stay for a while, a few weeks or a month, and they'd they'd work and they'd make some money, and they'd get a little stake, and then they would head on to the next place until they got to their destination, to the city that they'd been sent to. In which case, this was Alvin, who was sent to Knoxville, Tennessee. So he came to stay with me for a couple of weeks, I think, before moving on, and that was really interesting. Uh, I didn't know that we had any gay brothers um, in the order, um, but he was, and being on mission, he um, got to act more like himself, like he wanted to. You know, so right away he went down, found the gay bar in town, and started hanging out there. Well, I had to be in charge of that center. It's the first time I'd had to be in charge. I told him, "Look, you can you can go out, but you've got to go in clerics, and you and I are going to go together." So, and I'm not sure how I found out about that. You know, um, but anyway, so he's okay. So we put our clerics on, and we went down to this bar. Well, we were on patrol, and the bar was on probably on Fourth or just off Fourth. So it was, you know, it was normal, but it wasn't normal for priests to go into a bar and clerics. And so we went in there, and Alvin knew some of the people in there, but he was kind of I don't know what exactly. I think he was a little embarrassed, but um, he started talking to some of the people there that he knew, and a young man came up to me. A young white man came up and asked and said he wanted to talk to me. So while Alvin's talking to his friends, I went over to another part of the bar where it was quieter, and we just sat and talked. And this young man told me that he was living with some guy. Um, he didn't have a place of his own, and that he needed, he wanted to get away, but he didn't know how. He wanted some help. Well, I didn't have um, any space, so, but I said, yes, I can help you. So I was becoming an aid station right then. And I went out that weekend or whatever right away, because I had Alvin staying with me too, and I needed to find a new place, bigger. So I found a place that it had at least, well, where did I get these beds from? I'm not sure what all was in that apartment when I found it, but there may have been several beds. Steel, they were metal. Um, they weren't bunk beds, but there were, well, I guess I can say there were at least two, maybe more. So after this visit to the bar in Clerics, Alvin felt like it was time for him to move on and get to his next destination in Knoxville and get started with his mission. So he said. So he left, and I right away found a nice place that was not in the basement and had everything that we needed. And I got this young man, Tom. Um, I let him to move in and set him up there. Had a nice altar, had everything we needed for a center. Had actually a regular living room, separate bedroom. um, because it wasn't just Alvin, it was going to be other people passing through. So, yeah. Uh, so Tom stayed with me not very long. You know, I reported everything that like that when it was happening, and they asked him. They said they wanted him to come into San Francisco. Well, Tom um, became Reverend Michael, and his mother Martha um, joined the order, and she uh, was also, I think she was also ordained. This is down the road, of course. But it was great to have to be sending somebody into San Francisco already. I'm pretty sure that's where they wanted him to go. And it wasn't too long after that that another brother was sent down from Chicago. The teacher up there thought that I was getting thought that I was um, an egoist. That I needed some need to have my wings clipped or something. Well, it turned out that he was pretty out of balance, and they ended up taking him out of Chicago and putting Master Philip and Master Matthew there. That used to be Reverend Jenny. Pretty soon after that, after so he sent this um, young brother down uh, who just came in with a real belligerent attitude, like he was thought he was going to take over this mission. And so that's how he'd been set up by the teacher up there. And I had to set him straight right away, which I did. And the next thing that happened was, you know, the change in directors up in Chicago instead. Uh, and that was a big relief. And the next thing that happened though was this another brother, a wonderful brother David Davis came, and he's on the East Coast somewhere, I think in Massachusetts, which is where he was from. Very gregarious Gemini guy, really wonderful, very intellectual. He has his own bookstore there, teaches classes and everything. So very so they sent him, and he really picked things up. I really was indebted to him because he was so out there talking to people. Pretty soon, he was talking to all these people on the street that had been watching me walk up and down the street doing my work for months. And he knew all these people. So he got the guy So he was telling them about me and really, you know, making people wanting to get to come to class and see us. So the guy that was running that Christian radio station um, saw me come walking by, and he put his show on automatic and raced out of the basement and flagged me down at the corner and asked me if I had time to talk to him. And so I said, sure. So I came down, and I'd been, sort of had my eye on Paul for some time. And anyway, and I wondered how long it was going to take before we meet. And so he had one pressing question. And that question was, is there a God? And it was really important to him. He really needed to know this. And I said, well, Paul, I could tell you that there's a God, but what good would that do you? You would be no more the wiser after that than you were before you asked the question. But I can teach you how to find out for yourself if there's a God. Because what we're not about talking about God. We're about experiencing God. And so if you want to find out for yourself, you came to the right place. Well, that really was all it took. The next Sunday, he came to my services. I guess by this time, David wasn't in the picture, or at this time. This must have happened before David. Yeah, that's why. That's true. It happened before David showed up. So he comes to services, and I know he's coming. He's bringing a couple of people with him, and I'm getting ready. And I had been in my meditation for months. I had been reaching what now I would certainly call the threshold. And it was nice and everything, but I knew there was more. You see that picture of Jesus, this is an old Protestant picture of Jesus knocking on the door. I was knocking on the door. And I've been doing it for months, and I'd get that far, and I couldn't go any farther within. This day, and so the thing is that we never wrote a sermon. We never prepared anything. We just would get ourselves into the place, into the holy of holy place, and we would speak from there, from that point. Our goal was to, well, you could say, channel the Holy Spirit or whatever. So I wanted to get to that place. And I had to get through. I had to get through whatever it was that was blocking me. So I'm sitting there in meditation. It's about a half an hour before service is going to start at 11. Got everything set up. And I reached that place. And I just literally forced myself in deeper. It was like pushing a stone out of the way of the tomb, or pushing, breaking down the door. And I was hunkered down like this and just like pushing with all my might. It was like such a physical thing, it felt like. And the dam broke. Uh, and out came this just flood of love. It was just, and I had the door ajar. This is like 5 minutes to 11, and the door is open to the street, and the I could just feel the love flowing right out the door and down the street as these people. I heard the door open. I knew it was them. They come walking in, and they're laughing and smiling. There's and it was like they were caught up in this wave of love that had just flowed out through me and flowed out. And it was one of the most lovely experiences I've had in my life. And Paul started coming to classes, and it was again a same situation. That within, well, I'm not sure that he even moved in. Um, I don't think so. I reported about him, and they had him go straight to San Francisco. So he of course he got ordained too. It turned out his father was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, Catholic, I think, and none too pleased about those events. But anyway, saved another. Well, David started attracting all these young people, hippies, or something like that, hanging out in the park, playing drums and all this. And he got to know all these kids. And turned out that this couple was they were getting married that day. And they were going to have a big party in the park. And they asked, so David came rushing in and said, they want us to come, and they want you to bless the wine. So we went over to the park, and had a big jug of wine. They were having their wedding feast there, and I blessed the wine so that everybody, I think, I'm not sure how I put it, everyone would be high, everyone would be happy. I don't know, something like that. And it surely did transpire. And the next thing I knew, there were 20 students in class. And David was moving on to his next mission. So I started teaching class to a full house, which is very different from what it had been for a long time. And I taught class to these people for a couple of months, maybe not even that. And then they let me know that it was time for me to go up to Chicago. And my mission was over in Kentucky. They sent Reverend Dan Liebert and a brother to take my place. And as soon as they arrived, I left. There were, other little stories like I met an Italian guy, a young guy, who came to class for a while, and he was by himself living there too. And Thanksgiving was coming along, and we decided to have Thanksgiving dinner together. And finally, we found an Italian restaurant that was open, I think. But that was kind of a fun experience. There were different, things like that. But um, the key then and now was to keep the order pattern, and it really paid off. And it was really a test of faith to be doing this day after day. But I always felt that the host was with me. And I've always felt that Father had my back. And so all the things that happened, uh, the little miracles and stuff, um, they were just part of the way. And I guess that's a pretty good place to stop.